Today we're going to also cover carburation in the winter, because some of you guys may not like what you're going to hear. But I had success with my China Brock carburetor. I'm really, actually, I'm not just happy with it. I'm really surprised, and I hope the damn thing holds up. Because I will tell you, I've got this thing dialed in so perfect, I don't want to touch it. I'd like to kiss it. Now, let me tell you the advantages over having a manual choke. You see, I got to make a bracket for that. I don't like stuff flopping around like that is flopping around there. Okay. Now, one of the mistakes I made on this truck, if you can see, is I've got one of those performance radiators on here. And I had a block, I think, in the heater core, which I think is out of there, but it came up in the cap here. That's this rust you're seeing here. Pretty fair quality radiator. Okay, I'm a big fan of the manual choke. The mistake I made, I think, is putting this thing, even in the summer in 90-degree heat, is barely running at 130 degrees. Okay, that's why I got cardboard now in front of the radiator, because I barely get that thing hot. It comes up to temperature the way I have it. I had to experiment with that a little bit. Now, I'm going to make sure this Holly's in my viewfinder. Okay? Ever since my days of the Roadrunner, I've been more of a fan, especially with two carburetors, trips of the Carter. Okay? There are other brands. There's actually Mikuni's were out. They're an older carburetor company. But they were ultra expensive, almost $1,200 a carburetor back in my day. The Carter AFB, if you wanted a factory Carter AFB, was around $700 to $800. Now my Roadrunner has two Carter AFBs, and they're trans-mounted. But I want to tell you what the best thing, okay, because this is a feature. Okay, if you're going to run two inline carburetors, now transverse means the carburetors are sitting sideways, like this, not like this, okay? Because they pass this off as something for the R400 transmission. But what this does is travels, and you can see there's a hole there for a spring too, okay? So it probably works for transmissions. But if you, this is actually a tunnel ram carburetor. This series of carburetor is exactly what I had on my 57 Chevy Apache. So now we're going to talk about winter carburation then. Okay, 57 Chevy Apache, 283, nasty cam, giant valves. That thing was built like I wished I had it back. But I used to go to high school with the fenders flapping, all rusted, and I had like half a dozen patches in the frame. It was a hell of a truck though. Except when you got in slippery, wet weather like this. I would have made this video sooner, but my driveway was turned into a sliding board the last couple days. Thank God for the sleet that came down. I got a little bit of traction to walk around. Okay, so that's a follower if you're going to hook up. That's what this is to run two 4-barrels. Normally you run like a 400 CFM, like this on the front, okay, and then you'll run a 600 CFM in the back. Don't ask me why they tell you to do that, but if you run two 600s or two 400s, you're going to end up somehow, like I said, the math doesn't add up. I think the carburetors actually do that math. Okay, so we're not here to talk about two 4-barrel setups because there aren't that many of them, but this is for inline is what this is. You can attach your linkage there and it'll follow your main throttle linkage. The Carter AFB has your tuning in front. If you look up these Edelbrock carburetors, my idle mixture, I can reach right in here. I can reach right in there with my pitties, and I can get to those idle screws. Unlike this monstrosity, has idle screws in the sides. The one I could, the one that ended up in the back here. This side, I believe, no, it's over here. This side over here would face the firewall, and I couldn't get into it. This over here, hopefully it's still in view. The idle spitzer screws are on the side here, and then it's got these Mickey Mouse float settings, and guess where that's where your viewing glasses are, facing the goddamn firewall. So this quick fuel Even though it's one of the lesser expensive Hollies, and it's an attractive carburetor, it's not the viable opportunity that you think it is. It's not what you want to spend your money on. That China Brock, I did have to set down in here. It has those 3 holes. I did have to go to the bottom here to get that shot a little bit more fuel rammed in there, because I was having a hell of a hesitation, which is what I could not get out of the Holly. I could not get out that initial hesitation. The Carter AFB, as far as I'm concerned, was the most perfectly designed carburetor, besides that Mikuni 1200 series and stuff that they had back there in the 70s. This is your carburetor, okay? Screw them Rochesters, all them other carburetors. There are not that many brands. I don't know how many brands of carburetors there actually are, because I'm an American boy and I grew up in the farmlands, and the auto parts store, driving out to Allentown every day for auto parts, or to my grandfather's speed shop, I should say, got to be a real drag. But I did get the right handle on things with this Carter AFB. So the mistake I made, I would stay with a stock radiator. But one thing I knew about these Ford 300 6-cylinders, they always ran boiling hot. And a lot of people tell me that was because of the transmissions, the C6s. I get a couple different mixed stories. I don't remember a cool running Ford like this one. Not any cool running Ford. I don't care what motor it is. They all ran hotter than a firecracker, like the GMs with the big blocks. You stuck your head in there in the summertime in 90-degree heat. It was like sticking your head in a furnace. So those are the mistakes that I made. So I have to yet make a bracket for the manual choke. Remember, I said I'm a fan of manual choke. Now let's talk about carburation in the winter. In the Northeast here, in the Great White North, whatever the hell you want to call this up here, at times, we get massive dumps of Arctic air and snow. That affects your carburation as far as your lean and your rich. If you get a good running cold weather carburetor, once it turns cold and bolted on, that's what I always did, especially when going back to that 57 Chevy Apache. I had 2 sets of carburetors for that, and a few others, even my Nova and my Camaro. And as a kid, driving in the Northeast, I did learn to drive a 4-wheel drive truck. But I could not afford that till I got out of the military. And even then, I had hand-me-down. I still enjoy hand-me-down trucks. I think they're the best. Because if you make a mistake working on them, who cares? You can always change it back. You buy something brand new, the parts might not be there to fix your F up. But I always had another carburetor. I had one set up for the summer running, and I had one set up for the winter, so I didn't have to tune and detune and do any of that. I kept note sheets on my my timing settings, where my timing was, where the vacuum settings were. So even if the thing maybe, I never really had a carburetor go out of whack. I used to just set the timing to where it had to go, and bolt the carburetor on when the season changed, and I got through the winter. And in the summer, I would just change the carburetor back. Now, a lot of people saying, well, what sense does that make? Well, it was just the way I did things. That's the way things went back in the 70s and the 80s. If you could afford a Holley carburetor back in the 70s and the 80s, you were somebody. If you could afford a Carter AFB, especially a factory one, or those, I mean, these Edelbrocks, when these Edelbrocks came out, the Edelbrock carburetor, they're not much cheaper today. They were 4 or 5, 5 I think the highest I paid, I think it was a 1406, I think it was a 1406 I bought with the automatic choke, which was another thing that taught me. I thought maybe the carburetor would teach me to appreciate an electric choke. It really didn't. Now, when the weather turned tepid into the high 30s, 40s, it was fine. But when it was down near in the teens or whatever, you're sitting there letting it idle. And you'll have to do that kind of like with a motor like this, especially if you made the mistake of putting that radiator in there like I did, that 4 or 5 core radiator, whatever this is. I'm idling here a good part of 10 minutes on blowing gas out the tailpipe till this thing will actually move the way it is. And yesterday I drove all the way maybe about 5 or 6 miles with the choke on a little bit to help it, because otherwise it was stumbling. But on the way back, after it heat soaked and I jumped from a store to a store, it was fine. So it's temperature that's affecting my atomization of my fuel is just because of the low temperature. And not to mention that um, going on the bottom there, I don't know what jetting's in that thing. I have yet to read the jetting. And this thing, when you buy these China Brocs, it does not tell you what jet is in there. Okay, so now that I got it to run and I know that there's nothing wrong with the truck because I was thinking it was a vacuum leak. I mean, I was really pulling my hair out with this goddamn Holly. Not to mention, I made the mistake of putting that open spacer plate underneath it instead of a 4-hole spacer plate. These are all mistakes that it's easy to make, even if you're semi-experienced like I am. Over the years, you forget things. But that open hole or that open spacer plate, that was the only thing I could get during COVID. Nobody had anything. Summit was answering the phone, and they were out of stock of everything you asked them for. They were out of stock. I mean, it's out of stock. It's out of stock. So, and this thing has a larger cam in it. So I need a little more fuel. Okay, they say go lean. Those screws are out about 2.5, almost 3 turns. The mixture screws is where they're at. I might come. I might find out come the warm weather. All I got to do is draw those screws in a little bit. I might not need another carburetor, or I might just need to change the jets, and I'll be set. So there's just 2 things I have left to do to this, outside of finish the body and paint. And somebody at Walmart yesterday put a nice ding in my fender, which I'm really pissed. No, you park out of the way up the parking lot, and some bonehead's got to park right next to you with a piece of shit. And I think they do this stuff on purpose. I really do. I just hate to say that. So the other thing to hate on about the Holly, there's no adjustment on this choke. This is for your vacuum secondaries too, which is another. Right there, they have a vacuum secondary with an adjustment on it. This is their Mickey Mouse. This diaphragm here is their Mickey Mouse, and there's no adjustment on the choke. There's no fast or slow idle on the choke. I didn't even have to adjust anything on this carburetor for the choke. It works fine. I'm totally tickled with the China Broc. So we're gonna have another segment on Amazon playing games with me. That's my next video, is because I'm going over to my bank after I get out of the doctor's appointment on Tuesday, and I'm going to punch their ticket, and they're probably going to punch my ticket for doing business with them, but they're not going to rob me of my stuff. I got somebody just sent me a nice explanation of what's going on with UPS, and right after I made the video, about 6 other people told me almost the same exact words and the same thing that this guy posted on my thread about that. So that's how the China Broc worked out. Be afraid of buying one? I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, other than what I did here and the problems that I had installing that, or I should say tuning it. There's no installation issues. It bolted right in. I had to change a few things around. That was nothing to do with the carburetor. I had to do nothing but tune that carburetor and pay attention to where my timing setting was, and I'm totally happy with it. So as far as me bashing the China Broc, I'm not going to bash the carburetor. I think it was a decent investment. Outside of Edelbrock was giving me no technical support. You're supposed to just figure it out. I'll figure out the jetting, and I will get back to you on what I think is the best jetting. Now, what I might do is buy another one and jet it the way I want, and then we'll play with that. And then I will give you my feedback, because I think that's the best thing to do, is to have 2 of those Edelbrocks. And I know where there's a used one sitting, but I think that has the automatic choke. I'm not sure, but if not, I'm just going to buy another one of them. But the adage with the other one is that Slippers has, his has the intake with it, and I do want the intake. I'm just like that. I'm a connoisseur of junk, and junk, that was the good thing about growing up in a speed shop that I want to tell you guys, you younger people. Don't be afraid to play with junk. If your mom and dad tell you they don't want it around, throw it away. You tell them it's a learning experience. Because when you work with junk and you get it for nothing, or you find it on the freaking street, you paid nothing. Okay, it's an education paid for. Because trying to ask somebody today when their minds are all full of this bullshit that's going on, everybody's got financial problems and stuff, it's not good. It's not good at all. So don't be afraid to pick a piece of, if you have an interest in something, say, boy, I should stop, maybe turn around and go back and get that. Don't be afraid to do it. Sometimes this stuff is totally shot, it's totally worthless, but I was just I was just talking to my buddy, the one that I tell that I say is a connoisseur of junk. He just found a nice pair of blah punk speakers. They work. Somebody was throwing them out up towards Wilkesboro. I think it was maybe an eviction or something. Somebody got evicted and the landlord or whoever cleaned it out. But he said, "Hey, I always wanted a set of speakers like that. I could never afford them. There's a $1,300 pair of speakers sitting on a street corner for the garbage." Do I blame Kenny for stopping? No, because guys like us can't afford $1,300 for a set of blah punk speakers like that. And who cares if they're 25 years old? I know what those speakers cost back then. And that really concludes this. So I am very unhappy with the Holly, and I was very unhappy with COVID. Now maybe somebody else could tell me something different about this carburetor, but they're on this 300 with the Offenhauser 4-barrel intake. There's not that many people out there, I don't think, that have this, that are running this setup yet. And there's just not enough information on putting a 4-barrel carburetor on basically a stock inline 6-cylinder. Now I did bore this a little bit. It does have Harlan Sharp's roller rockers. It's got a Howard's cam, um, but it's still far from being our gargantuan. But as far as the power this thing made yesterday, I was going out the Cole Road out here. Uh, it, it, it it did impress me. That's why I'm making the video and saying I didn't have a problem with installation. I didn't have a problem with the way it performs. The 4-barrel, when it kicks in very nice, very smooth transition to the 4-barrel. And the only problem I had was me in tuning it. So be afraid of buying one? No, I wouldn't. Okay, thanks for watching my videos. I'm freezing my ass off out here, and I've got to get stuff done because we got a big storm system boring down on us. I want to get some more firewood over here, and I've got to go get some fuel oil for a friend is out of fuel oil, and he does not have a large can like I have, so I got to run my can over there so he can put fuel oil in his furnace. And he does not have a pump like I do. He evidently has 5 or 6 jugs of his own. He said, I want to put another jug in to make it through the storm. Everybody's hoping it's going to warm up. And I can't believe that people our age got to live like that, but that's the way people are living right now. And I forget what he said. I think fuel oil's up to $4 and some cents a gallon up here. Maybe I miss. I really have to check. So thanks for watching my videos, and I got to go help my buddy out. I got to go help him put fuel oil in his furnace. All right. Thanks.